Soul Night Live, number 13. Welcome to a special Yes-ish edition with our special guest, Yes bassist Billy Sherwood, along with our special our special guest host, Joe Cass. This is my co-host, Stephen Cox. He'll be keeping an eye on the Facebook stream, so if you want to ask any questions, type them in the usual spot, and we will try to get to them. We got a lot of stuff to talk about tonight, so I'm going to try and get to everything as quickly as possible.
Sean, you got me now?
Yeah, that's good. How you doing?
All right, what's up? Good. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
Billy, what's up, dude?
Hey, man. What's going on?
Happy 4th of July.
Happy 4th.
Hey, brother.
How's that, better?
Perfect, yeah.
Incredibly handsome.
There you go.
Right. So, how's your move going?
It's coming to an end, thank God. I'm covered in dust and debris.
Are you moving far? Are you?
And plugging them back in is never fun.
Have you got a new studio where you're at too?
Yeah, I've got a big room that I'm using as my studio and setting it up now, and it's very nice. Overlooking the pool and the beautiful valley that's below us. It's quite nice.
Right, you're on Cali. Did you move far from where you were before?
I'm north of the San Fernando Valley, basically.
Oh,
So,
very nice. Okay,
awesome.
good. Well,
Yeah.
I hope you like it even better than the last one.
Yeah.
So yeah. Well, thanks for taking a break with us today to talk
Sure.
about your fantastic career and all the awesome music you've been part of. We got a lot of yes fans in here tonight, and got quite a few questions that came in online over the past week, and I've got some myself.
Okay.
Thought we kind of start early with some of your early musical memories and kind of work forward. And
Okay.
And then we'll get to the questions from the fans shortly thereafter.
Okay.
And Joey, how you doing, man?
We're having a party.
Excellent. All right. So, Billy, how are you spending your days lately during this unusual time?
Oh boy, it's a lot of time on your hands, and I've been working on various productions. I'm working on a Prog Collective 3 record right now, which is really cool. A bunch of great artists involved in it, and it's the third in the series of the Prog Collective stuff that I've done. And working on a few other projects, and also have been doing actually like online lessons for bass, guitar, or engineering, or production and songwriting, whatever said person is interested in wanting to know a little more about. And that's been really nice to do, and very gratifying to see working with young kids who are starting to play instruments and see their improvement, happen. It's great. It's been fun.
Well, that's awesome.
Productive time.
Yeah, teaching's like one of the best parts, kind of taking what you know and giving it back,
Yeah, I mean, I've never done it. So for me, it's kind of a new area. And you don't really realize how much you have in your head until you're trying to go back to the egg and explain the beginning part of the learning of things to someone. And there's just a lot of knowledge there. I feel sometimes like I'm inundating and giving too much information at once and sort of overthink, but it seems to be working out well, and people are quite happy with it.
Hey,
try to go over all the modes in one lesson. That's my word of advice to you as a fellow bass teacher. Don't go over all the modes in one lesson.
Yeah, like what a week.
Yeah, I know, right?
Hey, Laura Bell's wondering what kind of coffee you're drinking.
Starbucks, of course.
Starbucks. Okay, excellent.
Dark roast.
So now you know. Excellent.
I just made espresso on the stovetop like my grandmother. So I'm here with Mark from TMR, and we're drinking coffee and vodka. Good mix.
And,
Wow, that's a gnarly mix.
And my shows are
Separate cup.
subsidized by Dr. Pepper.
I have
My
water.
dental bill was too.
Sean told me this was a party, so I came ready. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, it's the 4th of July. We might as well party a little bit, right? It's like it's not dark enough for you to have fireworks yet, Billy, but over here it sounds like the bombing of Dresden. but in a good way.
I don't know where you're going to get fireworks because they've clamped down on it over here in California.
Yeah, well, it's awful dry out there. Yeah, I got could be.
Well, it's not so much the dry thing; it's the social distancing stuff and the Corona craziness that's gotten shut down.
It's better to stay home and just fire off some in your driveway or something, you know.
Right?
Exactly. So I was wondering. I know you grew up in a musical household. Your parents were musicians as well. I was wondering, before you could even buy any records of your own, what are some that you remember that you loved that you heard around the house? Like,
you know, my dad playing Jobim records and big band records of Frank Sinatra at the Sands and, you know, Gillespie and Glenn Miller and listening to his sort of likes. And then, of course, my brother, who was 5 years older than me, had a great record collection and turned me on to a lot of the things that I enjoy still to this day. So,
yeah, like what?
Well, I mean, Mike turned me on to Yes, you know. I didn't know who Yes was until Mike played me Close to the Edge. And up until then, I was listening to Earth, Wind & Fire and Shaka Khan and just like funk stuff and getting into R&B. And then Mike, there you go. Then I had
amazing record.
Ohio Players, Taste of Honey, you know, all these funk things. And then Mike played me Close to the Edge one day, and my first reaction was, I turned that off. I can't even hear this. This is, how can you enjoy this? I don't get it.
It's intense.
It was too intense for me. And then about a week or so went by, and I was walking by his room again, and he's playing it, and kind of heard it in a different way, and asked him, you know, can I come in and listen to this one more time? And then from that point on, I just became a devout Yes fan and started listening to Yes. But before that was really funk and R&B is what I was kind of into as a kid. My first concert I went to was Earth, Wind & Fire. I was 12. Yeah, I was 12.
So what was that, like 1979-ish?
77.
77? Okay. Well, that was a prime era for them. I mean, that must have been absolutely scorching.
Yeah, they're at the Sahara Hotel and the Pyramid and the whole 9 yards. It was great.
But yeah, that's right. They came out of the pyramid, didn't they? I remember that.
Yeah.
I've seen some video of that. Or like they vanished into it at the end of the night, and they were elevated, and then they just dropped the bottom out, and there was nobody in it.
Yeah.
It's like, that's showbiz.
Kind of a Cirque du Soleil way ahead of its time, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Arena rock.
You know, for me, Earth, Wind & Fire was like the Yes of R&B, you know? That's how I always thought of it.
Oh, totally. And kind of Steely Dan R&B too, when it comes to immaculate production values and all that.
And writing.
Yeah.
Hey, Billy.
It's incredible, you know.
For a cool memory dig, your brother was telling me about how you two were driving to Lake Tahoe, listening to Tales from Topographic Oceans in the car.
Yeah.
He was telling me this when he was in Jersey for like the Monkeys Fest, and of course my dad knew. Michael's coming. We gotta go. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And then we went and hung out with your brother, and we played Relayer, which was cool.
Yeah. Mike turned me on to a lot of, you know, fusion stuff, Weather Report, Mahavishnu stuff, and also, you know, Peter Gabriel and Genesis and Floyd. I mean, most of what I dig, you know, Mike turned me on to. He would always come to me with a record and say, you know, you should check out this whole record, but I know what you like, and check out track 3 or track 7 first. You're going to dig it. And, you know, that's kind of how he always got me into music. And it paid off because a lot of the stuff is still, I listen to it today. You know? What do you think was the first record you bought with your own money? Well, it wasn't. Or did you say Earth, Wind & Fire? No, because my brother had those records. So I just took them out of his stack. Right. But the first record that my mother gave me money to buy, bless her, was the Star Wars soundtrack. Okay. So in Star Wars. And I was living in Vegas at the time, and I got this record. It was a double album. It was very expensive at the time. And I got this record. I listened to it a few times, and I went to go skating that night or whatever I was doing. And I put the record in the place in my room where when sun went down and I wasn't there, it just fried this record, and it was just warped as could be. And of course, you know, when I discovered that, I took it to my mom and said, we got to get another one, you know? And she said, absolutely not. We just paid $70 or whatever it is for that. I can fix it. And I said, no, you can't fix this. It's not something you can fix. No, I can fix it. So she puts the oven on like 350 and she sets the records in on bricks and then puts other bricks on top of it, kind of melts it down into some shape and hands it back to me and said, here, it's fixed. I said, no, this is not how records work, you know?
Nice
Funny.
try.
But that,
Though.
Did you try
that
to
was
play?
probably one of my first, and then I started buying Yes records after that, you know, one after the other. Yesterday's, Fragile, Close to the Edge, you know, Tales, all that stuff.
What was the new one? What was the first new one that came out once you were a fan?
Going for the One.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
This
Just
Relayer
imagine
took me a little time to get into, and it turns out it's one of my favorites. But Tales was the one that I really got into, and just it really made me a devout follower, and it still remains one of my favorite Yes albums. And you know, I've had the luck to the honor of playing, I think, 3 of the 4 sides by now. And it's just always a trip to be on stage playing the bass solo from Ritual. I was like, how the hell did this happen?
Well,
What's the other one? What's the other one that you played besides Revealing?
Revealing, The Ancient, and maybe that was it, just the 2.
The Ancient. I think you
Not The
did.
Ancient, sorry. Ritual and Revealing. And
Got you.
The Ancient we didn't play, and then I think the other one is called The Remembering or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we did two of the sides. Yeah.
Have you ever seen
And they were
Joey's?
awesome.
Have you
Yeah,
ever
it was-
seen Joey's tribute band? Yeah, they're working up a version of the Remembering right now.
Well, yeah, I've seen them, and then they played at the Yes Festival thingy that we did in Philly. Wasn't it in Philly?
It was Philly.
It's great.
Yeah, they don't shy away from the hard stuff, and I love that.
Someone's got to do it.
Yeah, I hear you.
Well, we sometimes wonder. We're like, you think Billy's just like ripping on Sound Chaser right now, getting ready? Like, how am I going to sing that part and play that part? You know.
Yeah,
How's it been?
You know, I had it down, and then coronavirus came in, and it is all gone now. And you know, in order to play it next year, because we've already put the tours up already on sale in Europe. You know, I'm going to have to go back to the Egg. But a lot of Gates, I know the bass lines from playing it over and over and over in my room.
Gone but not forgotten.
One of those things where it's like there's so many freaking notes that link the whole thing that you can't just wing it. You got to really know it. Yeah. And I had studied it pretty well right up before the cruise. Then it all collapsed. And
that's cool.
Now I've got so much other stuff going on. I don't sit around and just play Gates for fun. So it's kind of all slipped away, but it'll come back in time, you know.
Did you guys have a chance to rehearse any of side 2 of Relayer, or was it like you're all working on it at home and plan to get together?
Well, we didn't really get to that place because we didn't all gather at the rehearsals.
All right.
Yeah.
You did a great job with Gates last year, by the way.
Thanks. Yeah, that was a fun one to play. I used to play that every day in my room when I was like 16. Just to make sure that I could play through it and not stop and I'd try to make sure I got every note right. And it was just a great way to practice, you know, it was a great way to practice.
You know, you're an example of someone who really had a dream come true. You know, I'm sorry it had to come about the way it did, but
yeah, well, it came
first.
It came first without the tragedy.
That's true. That's true.
You know, I was playing guitar, kind of created my own little spot in the band, and you know, I wasn't really replacing anybody and everything like that. And then, of course, you know, I leave, and then the total unexpected happens, and you know, never imagined in a million years, but here we are. It's hard to believe I've been doing it now for 5 years.
Yeah.
There's the 80s Billy with Yes, the 90s Billy with Yes, and the 2000s Billy with Yes. That's how I see it.
Right? I know.
And they're all at different stages of my own life. So as a fan, it's, wait, that's Billy on that recording? Wait, Dad, why was Billy with Chris? You know, when I was 7.
I kind of take pride in the fact that I've been lucky enough to play with several different lineups of this band. You know, I played with the 90125 lineup. I played with the semi-classic lineup. You know, we had the new version that we've got going on now. It's been kind of interesting to see that dynamic and how it rolls, but at the center of it is the music, and, you know, paying attention to the music is the most important thing, of course. And it's been an amazing thing to watch up close and personal.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome, and I can't imagine anybody better to do this than you. So I think,
Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
Chris left everything in really good hands.
Thank you.
So what, Steve doesn't want to play Homeworld?
God, we just haven't gotten that far yet, I guess. I was the one lobbying for Gates of Delirium for forever. So
Right.
the fact that we got that one in the air, you know, I'll keep that going on the front burner for right now. And we were about to go do it for the world, and we got sidetracked here by this thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to really be the next step out, is to make sure we fulfill that promise of taking that all over the place. You know?
Excellent.
So how did you first meet Chris and kind of work your way into the Yes equation that way, or how? Where's that?
I saw Chris at a Moody Blues concert. He was sitting a few rows in front of me and over to the right. And I was there watching my friend Guy Allison, who was in World Trade, who was the second keyboard player in the Moody's. And in the Moody's at that time was Patrick Moraz from Yes, obviously. And so I came to see Guy, but I was also going to meet Patrick for the first time. I was kind of excited to meet the guy from Relayer. And then I see Chris sitting there in front of me, and he got up to go back to the green room with his laminate, you know, and I just hopped up and followed him and got behind him and literally grabbed his coat and pulled on it and said, "Hey, you're Chris Squire." And he turned around and said, "Yeah, I am. What about it?" You know, and I, you know, told him what a huge fan I was, and that was our actual first encounter. And then we were backstage together because I had my own laminate through Guy, and I didn't want to bug him or anything like that. But we had a mutual friend and an engineer named Tom Fletcher, who's a friend of mine who has worked with me on a bunch of records in the past, and Yes too. And Tom was in Chris's ear all night going, you need to meet this guy. You know, so when I walked over to say hello again the second time, Chris was kind of like, "This guy tells me we should hang out. We should do stuff together." And then it just kind of started from there. "Do you want to go to dinner? Do you want to write a song?" And we just became fast friends immediately and had a great time from then forward. Pretty
And
much.
what year was that when you first met him?
Well, I want to say 88, 89, somewhere in there. Right before Union kicked into gear, about a year before Union.
Okay.
So,
And
late 80s.
so The More We Live is the biggie that, you know, kind of was
He heard the World Trade demos and was intrigued by that. I didn't know that when I was grabbing on his coat. And it was after Tom told him, "This is the guy from World Trade." And Chris told Tom, "I've heard these demos, they're great, you know, blah, blah, blah." So whatever year that would put it, about a year before World Trade was made.
Okay.
I don't know off the top of my head, but.
And was The More You Live like on the top of the pile out of a bunch of songs you wrote initially, or was it the first song you wrote together?
It was the very first song. And yeah, he came in with that that sort of sus chord, 2-chord, 4-chord thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, I kind of came up with this idea of the lyric back and forth thing, and then an answer, and then back and forth, and met with him and showed him a bunch of lyrics, and he said, "Yeah, let's pursue this, let's go." And then we just started bringing in Tony Kaye and Alan White. We got involved, and before we knew it, we kind of had this thing going on, and it ended up on the Union album, you know.
Yeah. Was Trevor on that track too, playing guitar?
Yeah, Trevor ended up playing the guitar solo.
Okay. Yeah, I thought so. It sounded like him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And John, of course, came in and sang it, you know.
Yeah. That song is really one of the better ones on that album, I think. You know, for many people, it's their favorite.
It's very popular amongst the people who will listen to the record.
Yeah.
You know, it's not that it's gotten a lot of heat in the that, you know, the days
Well, you know, in hindsight, I think that album has aged better than its reputation lets it be. You know, I think I really.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the
enjoyed it
same
when it was new.
can be said for a lot of the material on Open Your Eyes. People have come back to it decades later and gone, you know, there's things on there I kind of like. It's like, well, better late than never, but okay.
That shit was great in '97. That shit was great in '97.
It's even better now. You know, I think for a lot of classic rock fans, the 70s catalog is really all they're familiar with. And maybe, you know, Honorable Lonely Heart. And after that, I think Yes just kind of dropped off the radar. So
Yeah.
it's fun to talk about these 90s albums because there's a lot of great music there that most people probably don't even know exists. So if nothing else.
Well, and you were also transitioning musically, genres were changing. Nirvana comes into play and grunge takes over. And, you know, there's always that sort of popular trend that bumps the trajectory of this or that. But really, at the end of the day, Yes is one of those bands like Genesis and Pink Floyd that just keep going through all that and just making their own music. And, you know, Genesis suffers the same fate of, I won't listen to Genesis if Peter Gabriel's not in it, and I won't listen to it if he's in, and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, for me, I've never understood that mindset of dividing music up by who makes it as opposed to what it sounds like and if I enjoy it. You know, I don't really have distinctions. I love Abacab as much as I love, you know, Landmines Down on Broadway. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And some people look at me like, how dare you say that? You know, it's like, well, you know, sorry.
Billy Sherwood trivia. His first Genesis album was Trick of the Tail. Did I get that correct?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I heard Dance on a Volcano and was pretty much in from the moment I heard that opening drum fill guitar riff together. It was like, I'm in.
Yeah.
Sean told me if I get 3 facts, I get a prize. So that's one. I'm 1 for 1.
Oh, there
Baby.
you go.
We'll drop it in the mail. So, how does Union strike you guys all these years?
Well, as I said, you know, it's gotten a lot of heat from a lot of people. I mean, Rick Wakeman hates it and is very open about it. I think that every album, it has its context, and the feelings from the band come from the production itself and how an album was made.
Sure.
And I don't think because the fans weren't there when that happens, they don't have the luxury or the burden, depending on how you want to look at it, of suffering any of those politics, and they just hear what they hear, and they either like it or they like it. They don't remember, oh, that's right, that day in the studio, this, that, and the other, and I wasn't happy, or I was happy. So I think the fans just listen to it as music, and people making records, you know, I mean, I won't mention some of the albums I'm talking about, but I've had people come up to me and talk about this record or that record, that it's one of their favorites, and I just look at them puzzled, because I remember how it was to make it and thinking, really? Okay, well, I'm glad someone did. So,
I think every album has their hardcore fans, you know, through the whole catalog. You know, it's interesting.
Yeah. And I've always tried to just let the listener decide and not really give them the gory details of how these things are made. No one wants to see the sausage factory. They just want the hot dogs, you know what I mean?
Right.
So that's kind of my theory on it.
As long as the meal's tasty, then who cares how it was
And
made?
when you're
Would you
producing
like
records,
some sausage?
when you're producing records, you're listening to it, you know, as an overall thing. And sometimes things get politically strange inside there when you're trying to make a final production, and people's feelings get hurt, or other people are happy it's turned out that way. It's part of making records. There's you know, a beginning, a middle, and an end, and there's happiness and drama inside all of that. You know, like give and take, getting your way, not getting your way, you know. But at the end of the day, the speakers do the talking, and it's really up to the listeners to decide what they like, I think.
Yeah, that's true. How about the tour? Did you get a chance to check out?
Talk someone into hating a record if they really love it. You know what I mean?
You know, after running a progressive rock forum for 20 years, I can safely say that it's a lot easier to talk people into buying things than to talk them out of it.
Right.
Certain car wreck kind of mentality where it's like, oh, you say it's bad. Well, I better go see just how shitty this really is.
Right,
But
exactly.
you sell a record anyway. So, rock is good, even when it might not be totally positive. you know,
True.
get people curious,
True.
and that alone sells records.
Yeah.
Well, how about the Union tour? Did you have a chance to go check out some of those dates in
I
person?
saw it when it was in LA at the Forum, and I thought it was awesome.
It was.
And then I distinctly remember going to Chris's and partying all night long afterwards. And he had just he just received a copy of Fish Out of Water on CD. It had just been made into a CD.
Oh,
And we sat there and listened to the whole thing, and because he knew what a fan I was of it, and you know, and it was really fun night. I'll never forget that in his penthouse condo there in Hollywood. It was very kind of a rock and roll scene that night.
imagine. Not quite Keith Moon quality, but
Yeah,
yeah,
it was pretty good.
yeah, I'm sure I can imagine.
I was much younger,
Oh, it was
much more durable.
L.A., man. L.A. in the early '90s. Give me a break.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, leading up to the Talk album, were you? I know you didn't actually write anything on it, but were you kind of on the periphery as it was being put together?
Vaguely. I mean, I didn't really have anything to do with that until the touring came into play. They just kind of did their thing. I think I went over to the studio once or twice, and Trevor played me some stuff just for me to hear, and when we were starting to talk about touring, but I had no involvement in the making on any level of that record.
Well, you got to know it pretty well.
It was great tour, and we played in a lot of great places, and I have great memories of, you know, Madison Square Garden was amazing, and Budokan in Japan, and a particular gig in Chile in the train station, which happened to be filmed in like a 7-camera shoot, and the audio is great, and performance was great, and it's turned into sort of a cult, you know, go-to if you want to see the concert, you know what I mean? And it's cool to have that. You know, when I look back, I'm like, oh my God, I look like I was 12. You know, that's going back a ways now.
Was that the biggest audience you played to with Yes at that Chile show?
No, the biggest audience was on that tour somewhere back east. I don't remember where. But we played like a racetrack that had a festival, and Yes was the headline, and there were 60,000 people.
Wow.
I just remember looking out going, holy cow, that's a lot of people out there.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah, great. Another great gig was the Gorge in Seattle.
Oh, it's a beautiful place.
That we did, and that was great. And so I have great memories of that whole tour, and the band was smoking hot, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, again, I was sort of surreal moments on the show where it was like, what am I doing playing a double bass with Chris Squire at the front of the stage?
That was great, you know.
Well, you know what I mean? But that was Chris's doing. He wanted to do it. And I kept saying, are you sure? I don't need to do this, Chris. I'm happy just doing what I'm doing back here. No, man, you got to come down and do this with me. And, you know, I'm like, well, all right. And so it was cool to see him open that door a little bit and be that down to earth, you know, not to have an ego trip about everything, and just really, you know, we were friends. So he was doing me a solid.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a great moment, and it's just, you know, it's interesting to see the two Yes bassists on stage playing bass together. You know,
and it's archived there for all time, and there will never be, you know, that's the only time you've seen two bass players with Yes. You know what I mean? That's it. It's a very rare thing on that tour.
That's very true. That was a great tour. You know, I thought even the older stuff sounded better on that tour. Almost like hanging around with the 70s lineup kind of taught the 80s lineup how to play the 70s stuff better.
Right. Well, that's possible. I mean, I came in and just did my bit as best I could, and, you know, tried to lend a hand where I could. But I know the band sounded great. That's for sure.
So, yeah, that was the Talk album. What was that, 1994?
94.
94, yeah. That's another underrated 90s Yes album that is definitely worth seeking out.
Yes, without a doubt.
There's even a few decent boots out there. I don't usually suggest those, but there's one here called Endless Dream from Canandaigua, New York. Does that ring any bells? How the hell do you pronounce that?
Canandaigua.
Canandaigua. There you go.
Is that a talk?
That's
Is
the
that a
New Yorker.
talk?
When you're from the Bronx, you just say, it's basically Canada, but it's, state of New York.
That's right.
It's
Yeah.
a talk bootleg. Is that what you're saying?
It's a talk bootleg. Yeah.
Oh wow.
It's a pretty good one, actually. I don't usually do those, but since there's no live recording of that tour, why not? Right?
Sure.
So.
Steve's got the only copy.
So, okay. So after that, I guess Yes kind of was looking for new management and a new direction. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, we got off the plane in LA and the vibe in between the band was horrible, and I wasn't a member of the band at that time, so I didn't get involved with any of the politics or any of that stuff. But you could feel it, and you just knew it, that something not good was going on, and they broke up. And then, as they do, Yes, it's like mercury on a table. It just sort of goes, whoosh, and then it comes back together like the Terminator,
Right.
And it was the classic lineup. And my friend Tom Fletcher, who introduced me, I told you, was the liaison between me and Chris there for that first meeting that night. He ended up working with them in San Luis Obispo on Keys to Ascension 1, being the live engineer and sort of getting the tracks recorded. Exactly. And I got called from Chris, would I mix the album? So I mixed it at my place. They came over to my place. At the time, I had a studio in Van Nuys. And they came over to my place. We mixed, and a couple of weeks later, I got a call. Everybody really dug the way you worked with them, and blah, blah, blah. We want you to produce and record and mix the next Keys to Ascension 2. Are you into it? I said, sure,
Right.
And that is that record right there.
Sometimes it is a pink cover, so it's the same thing, though.
Can I just say,
Huh?
I want to say, Billy, as a Yes fan, the drums on the Keys to Ascension studio tracks are probably the best sounding drums on the Yes album since, to me.
Yeah.
When I listen to Heaven and Earth and I listen to some of the more recent albums, I'm saying, those are the drums we're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a drum freak, so I like that attention to detail in that department. Other people are just like, it's drums, let's get on with it. But I like to work on them a bit more than that. So I ended up producing and mixing and working with the guys on Keys 2. It was at that point, mixing the very end of Keys 2, that I was sitting there doing my thing, and Chris was in one chair, and John was over on my couch in the other, and the phone rings, and John picks it up, and I could see from his demeanor something's wrong, so I stopped the tape, and what's going on? And he said, Rick just quit again. And I thought, oh, wow, I'm not even done mixing this thing. Don't you guys have a tour? And they did have a very big tour that was to be. And it kind of brought everything to a complete close except for finishing the record. And the band sort of scattered. And that was like the second time I'd watched the band scatter. And now we're sitting in my studio as that's happening. And I said to Chris, it's like, I don't want to sit here and watch Yes disintegrate before my eyes as we're sitting here working on it. Yes, we got to do something and take some initiative here. So we started writing material, and New State of Mind was one of the first things we started working on. And then The Solution and a couple of other things. And then we took Open Your Eyes from the Conspiracy project, which was called Wish I Knew at the time, and we turned it into Open Your Eyes and sent, Chris and I working on this stuff, send it to Alan, what do you think? And Alan was like, yeah, let me play on that. And then send it to John, and John got involved, et cetera, et cetera. It starts snowballing. And before we know it, we're kind of all hearing a Yes album. And it's at that point that the guys were like, you think you should join the band now, because, you've got yourself involved here by virtue of how we've come about this. A lot of Yes fans who don't know that period of time and how things worked, because they weren't there, and so I can't blame them. But they kind of think I came in and took Rick's job and came in and sort of, kiboshed this so I could get my way with that. The reality was, no, this thing had fallen apart, and I was literally trying to get the wheels back on in some shape or form so that the momentum of this band could keep going. My intention wasn't really to even join the band when I was working on the material, I told Chris, let's just write. I'm a producer. I write with people. Let's start writing and see what happens. It was only at the end that the conversation started shifting. And so I joined as a full member. And we got Igor to play keyboards.
Where did he come from besides Russia? I mean,
John Anderson's bag of cassettes of keyboard players.
Okay. Very good. Well, he was great at the time. You know,
bag, and he had like thousands of cassettes in this bag, and he kind of pulls out one. He's like, check this guy out, and he puts in, and it was, you know, the guy could play. It was no doubt. He was crazy.
Oh yeah.
But the guy could play. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, it was just what the doctor ordered. You know, so they needed somebody that could basically have the chops of Rick.
Yeah, and he also had knowledge of sound. You know, he had his professional sort of musical side down, let's say. So he jumped in, and so now I'm in the band as a full member here, and things are different, and I'm involved with the politics on a deeper level, and I'm involved with the band on a deeper level, and it comes time to make another album, and the band decides, you know, we should get an independent producer now that you're in the band. You should be on this side of the glass, and there should be, you know, with us, and there's a guy over there doing his bit. So we got Bruce Fairbairn to produce The Ladder, which was a album that we made in British Columbia, Vancouver. And it was a good time up there. We kind of all lived in the same sort of condo tower. Everybody had their own little apartment, and we'd meet every day at this church, this empty church that we rented, and started writing. And we wrote for months,
Do you
just
mind if
bad ideas back and forth, and came up with The Ladder. You know.
Do you mind if I ask a couple more questions about Open Your Eyes?
Sure.
I've got some ladder questions too. Where was that recorded? Was that all recorded at your studio?
At my place, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
And was Wish I Knew the only tune that was left over from the kind of the Chris Squire experiment days?
Yeah. I mean, everyone thinks that I just took the Conspiracy record and unwrapped it and went, here, we're
And
done.
added John
No,
and Steve
it
and
was
Alan.
all freshly written material.
I thought
The
so.
only song that was from Conspiracy was Wish I Knew, because the A&R guy had a copy of it, because we talked about Conspiracy with him before we started getting to the Yes stuff months before, Chris and I. And he said, hey, what about that song you guys have for Conspiracy? What about making that? And so that's how that came about. But yeah, everything else was made to order, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
John was involved with the lyrics, and Alan came and tracked drums, Steve came and recorded his bits. You know, we made a record like you would,
Yeah.
and all the materials new.
I had wondered about that because I actually saw one of the experiment shows. You guys played at a place in Phoenix called the Mason Jar.
We played twice in one night there.
That's right. I was outside in the parking lot, you know,
People
and I was
went out and came back in, and it was the same group of 300-400.
exactly. And I remember at the end of the night, everybody's like, one more, and it's like, we don't have any more, but we'll play Wish I Knew again.
Exactly. That was Chris's idea. I looked at him, I said, are you sure? He's like, let's just play it again one more time.
I was surprised you didn't do the Fish, but I think you added it later on some other days.
Yeah, it became part of some bass solo, I think, that he did. We did
Right.
together, like we did a bolero sort of twist.
I remember one where you both played 8-string basses.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I don't think that song's ever seen the light of day, but I've always been curious to hear it again.
Yeah.
Is that what it was called?
It was based on bolero.
Oh, right. Right.
But beyond that, I think it was just improv and a lot of Vakatonic.
Okay. Well, that was a great show. Seeing you guys at a little rock club like that, and you had Steve Porcaro like a week after his brother died, if I remember correctly, which was a shame.
Yeah, very heavy time.
Greatest drummers ever. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, all those brothers are incredibly talented, and Steve is such a sweet guy, and you know that was a real special time. And you know, I remember calling him saying, "Listen, I completely understand if you don't want to do this, and you know, I'll figure this out." And he said, "No, it's actually going to be exactly what I need." And so we went out there and did it, and you know, in part honoring Jeff, and you know, in part just carrying our brother Steve Porcaro up, you know, and holding him up. So Yeah, it was good. It was really good. And Jimmy Hahn was there, of course, and
Yeah.
Mark Williams was there because the key opened up for the Chris Squire experiment. I mean, I remember one gig we did where the key is me and Mark and Jimmy, and we're playing some tunes. And this guy in front of me is just going, "Yeah, bring Chris out, in between every song." And I looked at him like, "Trust me, it's coming soon. Relax."
Right.
And then when I came back out with Chris and stood in front of the guy again, because now I've joined the Chris Squire experiment, the guy just kind of looked at me puzzled, like, "What the hell's going on here? You're back."
So yeah.
Oh my God, it was funny.
Is there any footage of that? I've seen a few bootleg things, but was anything ever really?
There was some stuff filmed in Hawaii, I think, at one point that was online, but I've sort of lost track of where that was. But excuse me, I've been moving, so I'm fried. There's some stuff on YouTube, I think, from Hawaii. A couple of pieces, like roundabouts, short little bits, or long distance run around or something.
Yeah, well, I did have a question about that. So anyway, yeah, we're talking about this era, Open Your Eyes, which was 1997-ish. Another great Yes album that you might have missed if you're a classic rock fan that just buys the obvious albums. So
Right,
the
step outside the box, people.
You know, yeah, no doubt, because the goodness just kept giving. You know, so I wondered about that one. Did you go for a thicker vocal harmony sound on that album? Because that has some of the thickest layers of harmonies of any Yes record.
Well, one of the thoughts was a conscious thought of, you just had Keys to Ascension 1, you just had Keys to Ascension 2, and these long pieces of music. Let's get a little more concise in the arrangements and try to make some not, shorter songs, but let's just make some songs that aren't trying to be 15 minutes long, because that just happened. So let's be a little bit different about this. And so in doing that, we ended up doing a lot of vocals to support choruses that were repeating and things like that. And, back in that day, and I still do it, I'm a harmony freak, and so was Chris, obviously. So the two of us together, just when you thought, you'd sang the last part, one of us would go, "Well, what if there was," and, "Oh yeah, let me go do that." And then start ping-ponging and volleying off that stuff. And before you know it, you've got, "Waiting for the moment." It's just this massive group of vocals. And it became kind of a sound and a texture for that record that I think, holds up when you listen to it. It's like got that Queen sort of old school 80s, Yes, if you will, sort of big production in the vocals. I think it's good.
Well, Yes was always such a great vocal harmony group anyway, and it seemed like that was a real return to that, but like on steroids almost, in a good way.
Yeah, exactly. And we wanted it to be aggressive and in your face. And, quite frankly, part of my goal was, let's see if we can get this band on the radio again. Why not? Why shouldn't people be driving in their cars listening to a new Yes song?
There's some super catchy
But in order
stuff
to do
on there.
that, you had to write and arrange a song in a certain way. And to that end, Open Your Eyes served that purpose, because we got a ton of radio with that, which helped spike the sales at the touring. And then, those things, they all benefit the Yes fans. It just means we're available more and able to do this,
How much guitar was on there that was you versus Steve?
It's probably at the end of the day. I mean, I played a ton of the rhythms that are there, and Steve really took the lead role, because by then I'd crafted the arrangements of a lot of things, and Steve came in and took the lead role.
Okay.
And he played some great acoustic. He did all the acoustics on there.
Like a tune, like one of my favorites is Fortune Seller, with that 8-string bass. Isn't that like your Carbon 8-string bass? And
That's my Spectre 8-string. Yeah.
Sorry, Spectre.
Yeah. Yeah, and
that
Steve's
seems
got
like,
some great pedal
is it like
steel on
mostly
there.
you on there and Steve's just playing lap steel, or?
Pretty much me playing rhythm and him playing lead steel. That's kind of how we do
How about
it.
all those little lead kind of melodies, before the verse?
I'd have to listen to it to know, but there's some obvious ones that you can really tell, because my style is nothing like Steve's.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Point. Like on The Solution, there's a few guitar breaks that we decided to leave as my lead riffs, and they kind of feel and their texture and their approach different. It's kind of obvious to tell, I think.
Sure.
But for the most part, Steve was, the lead guitar player, and I played the rhythms, and I always looked at it as sort of building the house, framing the house, and then Steve came in and put all the pictures on the wall, as far as that record goes.
Any idea what inspired the cover art? By any chance, did this have anything to do with it, or was it just
I don't remember that being any part
was
of
it
the
just kind of like we
conversation.
don't have a lot of ideas and Roger Dean is in Iceland this year, so we're gonna do this?
I think it was more to do with the management wanting to just have you see Coca-Cola. You know what I mean?
Right.
Unobstructed, huge Yes logo. This is us, and that's a management decision, not, and one that at the time I wasn't really too involved with in terms of the artwork, because it's Roger Dean. So,
I
I'm cool with whatever
I
he's doing.
almost think that had it had a Roger Dean cover and a 10-minute epic on it, people would be revering it even higher than they do.
It's possible. It's
like it
possible.
kind of
But, when I
broke
go back and listen to the first two Yes albums, they're very short, little quick songs that go by.
Yeah, but they're crammed full of all kinds of interesting things.
That's my point, and that was kind of the throwback to try to get to a little bit in that, and I think at the end of the day it does hold up. I mean, when you listen to it, there might be a few things on there that make me a little nervous to listen to, but for the most part, when I hear it, I think I'm proud of that record. You know what I mean? I'm good with that. I stand behind my dish.
It's got
Billy.
it's got a lot of energy to it, that
Yeah, I did.
and I think
Billy, sorry, Sean, go ahead.
go for it, Joey. What you got?
I was gonna say, can you give us a 1-800, please?
1-800. That's funny.
That's right.
Yeah, I always watch TV when I work. It's just a thing. I'm a media guy. I need the TV on behind me while I'm working. I like a little bit of action going on in the studio, so I'm when I take a minute to take a break, I can tune out for a second. And so in my studio at the time was my TV, and at the time it was Dionne Warwick's 1-800 Psychic Friends Network. And it was starting to drive me nuts. And that's what started giving me the idea of this song. Because I was like, wow, is anyone calling in? I mean, who's doing this? You know what I mean? So that's where I got that idea for the 1-800.
1-800. Yeah, that's one of my favorites on there. I think that's just a great tune. I love
1-800.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is that you singing lead on Man in the Moon, or is it Chris, or both of you?
Chris. That was Chris's.
Wow, he sounds a little different.
Chris's tune. For the most part, that whole thing was pretty much Chris's tune, and I kind of helped develop it. But yeah, that was his thing.
Okay, very cool. Well, moving on to The Ladder, which was done in 1999. Is that right?
Sounds right. You'd have to look, but
I need better glasses, and the font is red on blue ink, so it's hard to read.
The tour definitely started in 99.
Yeah. Yeah. Was there any particular? I mean, does the Yes album ever start with a certain goal? Like, this time we're going to have some long epics and we're going to try and tick all these boxes? Or do you just kind of write and pile up the songs and kind of let it become what it could become?
Well, it's kind of funny because the business side of things and the record labels and the sort of, that branch of the music business, if you will, they'll always say, Fragile 2. If I hear Fragile 2 one more time, I'm going to kill myself. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's what they want Fragile 2. As a musician who writes music, and you can ask any other musician, or writer, you're never going to rewrite the things that you wrote before.
No, and that's a stupid way.
You're evolving, and your expression is evolving. And so to try to do that would be kind of insulting the listener, I think, a little bit, personally. Yeah. Especially as a Yes fan, because Going for the One doesn't sound like Fragile 2. You know what I mean? Tails doesn't sound like Going for the One. And for me, this is going back to Open Your Eyes. Open Your Eyes doesn't sound like any of them. So, it's kind of like you're always wanting to find, for me, its own voice in a project. And I think you can talk till you're blue in the face about we're going to make Fragile 2, and you're going to end up with a record that doesn't sound like Fragile.
Sure.
Unless you're really trying to mimic it, and then what's the point? So you've got that factor, and then the musicians who are just writing material, and no matter what precedent you put on the style of the writing session, you're still going to end up with what you write, and it's going to be different than what you thought you were doing, unless you are analytical in your writing and you listen to, I want to recreate Britney Spears' Toxic. Here's the tempo, here's the drum groove, here's, and you bend the chords just enough to legally get out of the way. But, that's not what Yes does.
Are we going to do a prog version of Toxic now?
And so
Toxic
to that
prog.
end, that's what Yes doesn't bother with that. So it's a creative process. Say what you want to at the front of the writing session, but it's anybody's guess what you're going to get by the time we're done.
Yeah,
really.
Any idea why they went back to the square logo for this?
What is that exactly?
The ladder.
The ladder. Oh, I think it's just to get a different flavor.
Okay.
It had been used before.
Yeah. So were these all new songs that you guys wrote once you got to Vancouver, or were there some of them?
Yeah. But what they were things that people had in their, archives, so to speak. You noodle around at home, you bring something to the table and share it with the band. And there's one song on there that I brought in, the guitar part that is the rhythm that kind of glues the sections together of the verses. I forgot the title of it as we sit here, but it's the one that
Face to Face.
Golden moments, sanctuary.
It'll be a good day.
It'll be a good day.
It'll be a good day. There you go. Thank you. Yeah. So I came up with those chords. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. That progression that makes up the verses. I had written that when I was like 16 in my room. And when I joined Logic and was bringing material in, I brought this progression in to see if this could make it to the Logic album. And they all said, it sounds too much like Yes, we don't want to do that. So I just bagged the idea. And when the ladder came around and I was noodling at rehearsal one day, I found myself just muscle memory playing that riff. And I was like, let's see if it is too Yes-like. And I started playing it at the session, and what is that? Let's work on that. What is that? And before I knew it, it started turning into a Yes song, which was just, for me, that's the one writing memory I have about that whole session the most, because I flash back on being a kid sitting in my room with an acoustic guitar and a cassette machine recording, and I still have the original cassette of the actual bit. And it's just kind of weird, you know what I mean? It's like a Twilight Zone of sorts. But yeah, all that stuff was freshly written, and ideas. Everyone brought in ideas, and we just commingled and created the whole thing, which was a great process, really, at the end of the day.
They were great live.
Oh yeah, and that was the first time that Yes had written a record like that since the 70s, wasn't it?
Well, the cool thing was you knew it was going to play live because you were actually we were playing it. We tracked the whole thing live. We all set up at Fairbairn's place, Bruce's place. We set up and tracked live, and we got, everybody played their parts. If there was a little fix, you go back and fix it. But for the most part, what you hear as the core of that record is us standing there together playing the songs. And that's why we knew when we were going to tour, it was a no-brainer. We're going to play this whole record because we've been playing it. So, we'll all remember it.
The House of Blues, House of Yes is a great CD or live album.
Yeah, no, it is. It's good. It's got a great energy to it, and the production of the video is really nice, and and it was filmed in Vegas, which is
Vegas,
where I'm from, so it was a special thing.
Yeah, that was
Sure.
great. And I saw you guys at a place here called the Tabernacle, which is an old church in Atlanta. And I remember people were just kind of blown away to see you guys in such a small place. I remember we walked in and some people next to me were like, "We're going to see Yes right over there." And I'm like, "Yep, get up to the stage."
Yeah.
I
think the idea was we wanted to play everywhere we could, and certain venues were taken, and it was like, well, do we not play at all, or do we just go for that venue? Let's go for it. You know what I mean?
I thought it was a unique perspective, because usually you guys are in this grandiose shed kind of setting, and to see you guys up close and intimate is an unusual treat.
Yeah, it's a different feel.
Absolutely.
Hey, Sean.
Yeah.
Did your radio station do something where you can go online and make your own version of the live CD? We had
I
something,
remember that. Yeah.
and I remember counting the minutes, like, how do I get all the tracks on it? And that CD that we made has Heart of the Sunrise on it, but House of Yes does not.
Oh, wow.
I don't remember you guys playing it that year. Did you?
Well, I'll tell you this. I do know this. We played Hearts.
Right.
And
I
I don't
remember that.
tell the story that often because I
Right.
was annoyed with my friend that night. But we played Hearts. And I before we played the gig, I told Chris, because there had been a thing going on where he was stepping on my cables. I'd go out to move and I'd be like, whoa, dude. You know?
Right.
So I told him, I'm like, I don't mind you stepping on my cables if we're not filming, but we're filming tonight, so just be mindful of the cables, please. And sure enough, I went out for the solo of Hearts. And
Oh,
I looked down, and the cable's out, and I looked to the right, and Chris is just standing there, because it's a big whole note. He's not playing anything.
right.
And he's looking down, and his foot is literally on the cable. And so now I'm reaching over, and obviously, so that kind of blew the take, so it's not included in that DVD.
Oh, that explains it. Wasn't
But it was
Close to the Edge-
really, I mean, and we had that track smoking. It was great. I was so bummed. I said to him after, I'm like, dude, of all the nights, what's going on over here with your feet?
Wasn't Close to the Edge played that night too, but left off the DVD?
What's that?
Didn't you guys do Close to the Edge also, but it didn't make the DVD?
I don't remember that part, but it's possible.
Okay.
Yeah,
I almost feel like you guys
Definitely-
kind of added it in the middle of the tour, maybe just for that particular show or something. Maybe that's why it got left off because it wasn't quite
maybe. I don't
happy
remember.
enough.
Something like that sounds familiar. That happened with the
Watching it
Union.
online, but then when I bought the DVD, it wasn't on it.
That happened with the Union 100%, because the Gonzo recording that came out a few years ago didn't have Close to the Edge. And you asked me, was I sure about Heart of the Sunrise? I could be mixing up different scenarios, but there's something that we have on that radio station version of the 99 tour that wasn't on House of Yes.
Yeah. I think Awaken was the big treat for that tour. That's the first time you guys had played it, I think, with that particular lineup.
Yeah, that song's always amazing. to
Big
play.
confetti ending and stuff. That was pretty fun.
Yeah, it's a great song. It's one of my
Yeah,
favorites.
it was beautiful. What are some of your favorite moments, like where you just, I don't know, like you step on those bass pedals and the whole room shakes? And does that just make this your arms stand up?
I mean, you know, there's the moments I like the most are the bass solos, obviously, you know, because I can honor Chris's trip and then go out on my own direction with it, which is kind of cool. The moment that I can remember being my most, oh my God, this is a nightmare moment, which is kind of funny now with time. But, you know, as a musician and an entertainer, you always have those dreams of like falling on stage. That's one of the nightmares you have.
Or off.
And then the other one is being late to be on stage and the band is playing and you can hear them playing. That's like another classic nightmare kind of thing. So we're at the Barclay in Boston. And this is me playing bass now. I forget what year it was, but we're at the Barclay at Boston. And Steve Howe had been playing 2 acoustic guitar solos. So he'd been doing clap and one other piece, right? And he'd been consistently doing this. And so that night in Barclays, I went to the back, you know, when he started his acoustic guitar solo, I went to my dressing room for a minute to do something. And as he's playing, I'm hearing clap. And as I'm walking farther, because Barclays is huge, and my dressing room's way, way away, I start losing the guitar a bit, but I'm singing it in my head. So I'm like, okay, he's done with clap now. He's starting the next tune. And I'm looking at my watch and, you know, getting myself together. And as I open my door to come back out, thinking I got time, I hear, is Billy Sherwood in the building? And I'm like,
Oh, wow.
no. He decided that night not to play the second song. So that'd been going on a while. Is Billy here anywhere? And I'm hearing this on a PA over in Barclays. And I'm like, oh my God, no. So I start booking to the stage on this very slippery floor. I just bought these new silver shoes that were slippery as hell. I round the corner to come up on stage. And when I get on stage, they're already looking at me like, what the hell's going on here?
Dude,
And
we're at that show.
And we were face down onto the stage.
Oh, man.
And I just kind of lied there and thought, you know, Chris, I thought you wanted me to do this gig. What's going on here? And then I just kind of shot up and took a bow, and we got on with it. But it was definitely the most stressful of any Yes moment I've had. That's for sure.
That was the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, and I'm sitting here with Mark, and Mark is saying we have that on video, actually. So that was at the arena in Brooklyn.
Brooklyn, that's right.
Hey, Mark. Love your guitar playing, brother.
Yeah. So anyway, that's
Yes, thank you.
Well, you're not alone. Remember, Trevor fell off the stage like last year with ARW.
Yeah.
Poor
Yeah.
guy.
I know.
It
It's a nightmare. It is a nightmare.
You know, you're in all these unfamiliar places, and it's dark half the time. You know, it's a wonder it doesn't happen more often.
And these shoes that I got were so incredibly slippery, and I knew they were, but I just needed to get back up there. And so I kind of did myself in once I got up there, just bit the dust, face down on the floor with the spotlight on. Like,
Was that the last time you wore the shoes?
Can't get any worse.
There's a video of John Anderson folding. I think it's the 90125 tour. Again, Mark is like an archivist. Billy, Mark and Jay Shellen talk like for hours, like deep library stuff. These guys have like library memories of music.
Yeah, that's funny.
And Mark's got this video of John falling off the stage, and then like Chris is looking around, and Trevor's just jamming, and they're like, "Stop, John's gone" or something. And he comes back up, and something happened like that.
It's a nightmare.
Wow, yeah. Okay, well, cool. That kind of got us caught up to the point when I guess it was time for Masterworks, and they decided to reconfigure the lineup and just have it be a 5-piece. What was the thought behind that?
Return to the classic lineup that, you know, pick it up where we left off when I was mixing, and they fragmented, I guess.
Was there ever any friction between you and Steve in the guitar department?
Well, I mean, you know, there was tension. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that was no mystery. But we were always very upfront with each other and very, you know, professional. And it worked itself out. I think in hindsight, looking back on what we did, especially because there's so much of it to look at on YouTube, that what we did was working. It might have been stressful at the time a little bit because, you know, he was used to being the only guitar player in Yes, which I got that part, you know.
Sure.
But the reality was life had taken this band in a different direction, and somehow, you know, I'm a part of it, and it is what it is. So,
well,
but I could see that they were heading back into that classic mode. I could read the wind, so to speak. So I just went back into my world of production and jingles and thought it was a good time to split, and went my way, you know, and then they went their way. Yeah. And I thought that was probably the end of my Yes experience, but I had also learned from years before that every single time I thought that's the end of my Yes experience, it came back to me, and it would keep coming back at me. And so by the time they had done their thing there, and now they've got a new singer, and John Davison is in the band now, and I get a call from Steve Howe, of all people, asking me, you know, can you jump in here and help produce the backing vocals and get us over the finish line, because we've only got 3 weeks left of production. We kind of are at a standstill here.
Heaven and Earth, right? The last Yes album?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I went to the studio, set up my little world in a separate little room, and sat there with Chris and Davison and Steve, and we arranged vocals and played around with ideas, and I came up with ideas, they had ideas, and it is now what you hear on that record. I recorded all that upstairs with the guys. So I finished that session, and again, I'm like, well, okay, that was interesting all these years later. Haven't seen them in ages, and I thought that was it. And then I got a call back from Chris a couple weeks later. We're not happy with the mixes. Can you mix this thing? So I said, sure. So I mixed Heaven and Earth, and then they go out on the road and they start producing live DVDs. And so I mixed live at Bristol, live in Mesa. You know, I've kind of lost track now because they blur into I'm mixing now the records that we do, and I'm in the band now. So it's kind of a blur, but long story short, I'm mixing their records, and I'm in the loop with them again. So when the time comes that Chris is sick, Chris asked me to fill in as a sub, and under the understanding he's coming back, of course. And then, you know, the rest is kind of history, as they say. And that brings us to where we are now.
Yeah.
You know?
Question about Heaven and Earth. How much of a stamp do you think Roy Thomas Baker left on it? Or was it he just kind of was around for a little while and then kind of split and left?
I don't really know. I don't know because I wasn't there, and I don't know how that whole show ran, you know?
Okay.
So,
How does that album sit with you now that you listen to it?
well, it's like another Yes album that has great material on it, and with an open mind, you find something in there that feels very Yesified to me. And, you know, I really got to know John Davison by working closely with him on that album and working on all the vocals. That was the first time we'd met. And he's a super lovely guy, sweet guy, and a really great musician with great instincts and a passion for Yes that I respected because it felt like the same kind of passion I have. You know, it wasn't just a gig he stumbled into. You know, he knows Yes music like we all do. And so,
Chris loved him.
yeah, so for that, I was really happy to see. And, you know, I think it's cool. We played a bunch of it live, too. It played well on stage. And, you know, like any Yes record, I think, you know, you can't kind of compare everything that the band does to Close to the Edge because it's not the same yardstick by any measure.
Not even
But
some people.
every album has its own merit and its own musicality to it. It's Yes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm a believer.
If
Chris
there could
loved
be-
it.
Yeah.
If there could be another Yes album, what would you want it to be like?
Well, I'd want it to be great, and I'd want to like it. You know, that's the other part of this whole equation is as a songwriter and a kind of artist guy, to really have conviction about your music, you better like it first, because then you've got a shot at someone else liking it. But if you just fake it and go through the motions and you're not crazy about something, chances are it's just going to kind of
No.
So I want to like it, and I'm pretty sure I would like it because, you know, I have a hand in it, and I'm not exactly a wallflower when it comes to opinions in the studio.
So you know what a proper Yes album needs, and I think it'd be
But you know, you're also dealing with personalities, so it's got to somehow fit in with everybody's you know, version of what that is. But I think too, at this point, we've all worked together. I mean, I've known Steve Howe a very long time now, and you know, we've worked together in several ways for a long time now. So we have a great relationship on that level, you know, where we're having a great time on stage together and really enjoying this. And he, you know, I know he's excited about the idea of a new album, and same with Alan and Jeff and John. And, you know, of course, Jay's there. We'll see how it all works itself out. But I think at the end of the day, if everyone's participating and giving it their all, it should be something interesting and great. It goes back to, you know, what's it going to be? Well, God, you don't know till it's done, but you just want it to be great.
Is there any inkling that there might be one? I mean, it seems like this is a great year to write some music.
There's plenty of time, right? It's
Right.
like, I believe there's another Yes album coming at some point.
Oh, I really hope so, because I think you guys have a great lineup, and it'd be great to hear you guys do some
Yeah.
stuff.
And it's, you know, it's time. I mean, part of the problem for me was because, you know, I've been hearing this cry for a new album for quite some time now. I mean, like I said earlier, it's hard to believe I've been doing this now, playing bass with Yes for 5 years, but that's 5 years. It's quite a long time. And in that period, I'm on tours, you know, and the meet and greets and whatnot, I'm constantly hearing, you know, we need a new album, we need a new album. And I don't talk about it a lot, but the reality is, you know, I was not comfortable at all with the idea of making a new album close to Chris's death. And, you know, there had to be a wide berth of respect there and not just racing to get into the studio and trying to do something. Because I didn't, you know, I didn't want to step on that sacred ground. And, you know, the last thing I want to do is look like an ambulance chaser or something. So I wanted a nice wide berth between him and whatever will be this next step. And obviously I'll be playing bass on it. So I'm going to bring my thing to it and honor Chris's thing as well by proxy. I mean, that's why we got along so well. We thought the same way.
Absolutely.
But I think now that there's been this much time that it's okay to start thinking about it. You know what I mean?
I think that would
And
be great.
it's right.
It'd be great. All righty. Well, I got some fan questions now. I thought I would just kind of go through the timeline a bit and kind of do
Can
some.
maybe we'll take a break. I'll go to Denny's and grab a bite and we'll continue this.
Grab me a club sandwich.
I need a wee and a vodka, man.
Steven knows I like those club sandwiches.
Oh, he loves those club sandwiches when they get them right.
I have a bottle
Right
of Tabasco.
When they get those right, it's a winner.
I know it. And they don't always. One time they brought me the little bread and I was like, what are you doing?
It's all about getting that bread toasted a little bit extra.
All righty. So my drummer was listening to Howard Stern. He does a lot. And they had William Shatner on there one day talking about the album you guys did, Ponder the Mystery. And
Oh, no.
I'm curious if you had any interesting memories of working with Captain Kirk. And, you know, at the time, you know, he's kind of been known as kind of a, I don't want to say, you know, when he makes an album, it's kind of a parody kind of joke thing in a way because, you know, it's the spoken word kind of serious thing. But you guys made a real musical record. And he even stopped.
Well, that was one of the first. Yeah, that was one of the first things at our first meeting we had. He said, so what are you thinking, you know, what do you think we're going to do here in terms of like, because we're supposed to write something together and produce it and whatnot. And I said, well, look, I don't want anyone laughing at this record. I'd rather have them crying because of some of the things you're talking about and get heavy with them and, you know, really dig deep into your soul and let them feel your heart and soul and not make it kitschy and not make it laughable. And he said, I love it. Let's think about an idea. And so Bill, being the way he is, he's super creative and he's really fast. He's always got great ideas. So they're always really, really quick. Calls me the next day, goes, I thought about it. It's called Ponder the Mystery. It's about a guy who's got everything in the world, but at the end of the day, he's really got nothing until he realizes it's the love of his family that's tying his whole world. And I was like, whoa, exactly. And so we went down that road and it's got a lot of emotional pull if you listen to it in that way. I mean, there's some of that melancholy chordal stuff against some of his lyrical content. I think there might have been a little shock from some of the fans who wanted to laugh at it and found themselves like, wow, wait, I can't. Well, I don't understand this. But my involvement and the people we brought in pulled in a progressive rock crowd a little more. And I think they were a little more open to the idea of it. And, you know, it's kind of was accepted pretty well. And was just an amazing record to make. I mean, who wouldn't want to hang out with Captain Kirk for that long?
Amazing. Yeah.
And, you know, we've become very close. And he's truly, I can say, a friend. You know, he's a dear friend. And, you know, he's always doing these Monday night football gatherings with all of his buddies, and I'm always invited to these parties, which are great, that hang out and just watch football with Shatner, you know. And I miss it. You know, since we didn't have it, I miss it.
I think I see some pictures and it's like a celebrity kind of thing, isn't it? I'm trying to remember who else was
I
there.
don't know who's who. I sort of stand in the corner and go, whoa, check out who's here tonight. You know, it's I'm a bit of a fanboy, so when Fonzie walks in, it's like, okay, I can't walk up to Henry Winkler and start going at him because, you know, I'm at Bill's place. I got to be cool. I got to be the cool dude. So, but it's funny.
Say, hey.
I mean, Dwight Yoakam's there, Brad Paisley.
Wow.
You know, there's all kinds of famous football players. You know, he's got a lot of buddies, and they show up. Dwight Yoakam was very cool. Henry Rollins. You know, I just kind of sit there and go, whoa, how did I get the invite? You know what I mean? It's another one of those moments.
Okay, that's wild. Okay, got another one here. All right, here's one. Will there be another Circa album?
There will be. I talked to Tony Kaye about it actually just like about 2 weeks ago. And because we made the last album, Valley of the Windmill, on Frontiers, and Frontiers just renewed the option for the next record. And so we're off and running. It's early. We haven't written a note yet. But yeah, there will be.
That's cool. And mentioning that, another person said, Circa's Valley of the Windmill is a favorite thing that he's ever done. So you got a huge fan of it out there.
Oh, that's cool.
Has he done any more writing in that vein that could go on another Circa release? Or maybe, as some of us speculated here, that the new material like that on Windmill could be used as the basis for a new Yes album?
Well, I don't think it could be part of the Yes album stuff, because that's going to come from a different place, as I said earlier, with everybody having ideas. Whereas Valley of the Windmill, those ideas are Tony and I together sitting there, so they have distinction. And that's how we're going to approach the next album too. Tony's got ideas, I've got ideas. We listen to them together, we talk about them, we merge them, and that's how they become those things that give Circa that sort of little bit of a thing, that has a different edge to it than the other stuff. So I don't think, even though it's kind of funny, I thought it was always kind of interesting back in the day when Circa was just starting out and going through its motions of second album, third album, is people comparing it to Yes, like this is Yes, when in reality, to my ears, it's really nothing like Yes. It's almost more like a progressive Steely Dan or something. I don't know. You know what I mean? But what do I know?
Great album.
So it's definitely coming. It's another album, and that material is a byproduct of me and Tony getting together and working on music. So
any Jimmy possibilities there?
What's Jimmy doing?
Jim's doing really good. He's busy doing jingles right now, and he's doing his thing. So I'm not sure how it's going to work, but I think TK wants to keep the last lineup that we had, which was Scott Connor on drums, and actually Rick Tierney playing bass very well, and me doing my guitar trip on there. So I can, and which I did because I have a band where I can be the guitar player. I like that.
We have a request that you cover Beyond and Before on your next Circa album.
That's interesting. I'll tell Tony that one.
And another one says Circa's Our Place Under the Sun is absolutely epic.
I agree. I'm not trying to fly my own flag, but that is a cool one.
In case some of you don't know, Circa is a band that Billy's had for a number of years with Tony Kaye, the original Yes keyboardist. So,
and like Yes, it's gone through a lot of members now.
You got like 4 or 5 albums already now, right?
Yeah.
I remember the first one with Cut the Ties.
Yeah. Cut the Ties on the first one, and then
Badass.
That was rather yesy.
Trust in Something was brilliant.
Information overload is
the
reality today.
Those concerts were some of the best of all time. Seriously, we had the best time doing all the Circa concert stuff. It was the best time.
Okay. Alrighty. Now here's the $1 million question that not everybody wants to know, but some people are hanging on to hope that you might do some Yes music with John Anderson. Is there any?
Me personally?
Between the amps? No, we're thinking a Yes album with him singing on it.
I don't know. I mean, I know that right now this lineup that we have is great, and if we record, that's what it's going to be. As far as a future of this band, I'm enjoying this current lineup because we are all getting along together. The musical quality is really high. The integrity level of everyone's interest in it is really high, and we're all facing the same direction. So I can't really speak to the future because, as I told you, I always thought, the last time I was going to work with Yes would be 1989, after the More We Live sessions were done. So I'm the last guy to know any of this stuff.
So never say never, but don't hold your breath.
Well, I know that this lineup is we're already booked, for the foreseeable future, and that's who we are, and I'm proud of it. And John was doing his thing with ARW. They have their own world going on over there.
Yeah.
So everyone's making music, and everyone's happy about it.
Well, kind of tied in together there, there's been some talk, lots of people hoping there might be a union #2. I don't know about that, but here's a question. We'd love to hear your take on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame night and what that was all like.
Lit.
Wow. What is this, like the Mueller investigation now? What's going on here?
That's right. Don't worry.
As the attorney for Mr. Sherwood, I'll just say it was lit.
I bet it was.
There were a lot of politics involved. And, beyond that, it's just not much more I can say. I would have loved to have played it in honor of Chris, but it didn't turn out that way. And c'est la vie, as they say.
Was it a fun night for you anyway?
It was very interesting, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd use the word fun because it was filled with, it's kind of obvious there would be tension there, right? You got these two, right?
Right.
It's not like I'm telling secrets out of school here.
No,
So it was just weird.
Somehow my dad hugged Janet.
It's weird because there I was watching my favorite band being inducted into the Hall of Fame, and somehow I'm sitting at the table involved in all this weirdness, which, I didn't ask for. I was just asked by Chris to play bass. That's all I know. So anything beyond that, and it wasn't a Yes gig per se. So how it's going to end up, and when you got Geddy Lee playing up there, it's not a Yes gig, So I just kind of rolled with it, had my drinks, and got on with the evening.
How'd you think Geddy did?
Geddy's amazing,
You know it.
He could play Happy Birthday, and I'd be front row.
Right.
With the VIP pass.
Had you met him before?
I did not.
Okay.
And it was a funny meeting because I met backstage in the green room, and I went up to him because I'm a fan.
Sure.
And I went up to him and said, Geddy, I'm such a huge fan, man. My name is Billy Sherwood. I've been following you for forever and love your playing, and it's great to meet you. And he looks at me and goes, why aren't you doing this tonight? And I said, in a word, politics. Just leave it at that.
That's the name of the new box set.
There you have it.
It was cool to see Bill Bruford pop up for that.
That was great. Well, that was actually one of my favorite parts of the night, was hanging with Bill, because we got to meet and hang out and became kind of fast friends. He's a funny guy.
Oh, yeah.
Super funny. And he's quick.
And
I like to have a good laugh. That's why I got along with Chris so much. We'd laugh all the time. So that was a great part of the night. That's for sure.
Okay.
And it was great to see Yes get inducted. All the nonsense aside, it's still my favorite band getting inducted into the Hall of Fame. So, it's about time, is what I was thinking too.
Yeah, I thought it came together as a pretty good performance. And
I was also thinking it's too bad the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame didn't figure this out before we lost Chris.
No doubt. Yeah.
So that was kind of also sort of an irritation factor too. So it was a weird night, a lot of emotions.
I can imagine, but I'm glad you were there anyway,
I was too. I wouldn't have missed it for the world. I went to the sound check, you weren't going to keep me out of there.
What'd you think of ELO that night?
I thought everybody was great that night. ELO was great, yeah.
Yeah, just on the record. I think Jeff Lynne has a painting in his attic that's getting very old.
Has what?
A painting. It's like Dorian Gray, man. The guy never ages.
Right.
Yeah.
Here's
another one. I'd like to know his take on the future Yes drummer touring studio situation. What was the reason for? I'll ask that first. How's Alan doing? And what's is it?
Alan's doing great, and he's been playing great, and he had some back issues that he had to deal with, and Jay Shellen seemed like the real obvious choice because Jay had played with us, me and Chris in Conspiracy.
Oh yeah, you did a great job.
And you're dealing with a band that has a rhythm section. That relationship between the bass and the drummer is key. And my thing with Jay is like, we could hit the same downbeat in a room with no lights on. You know what I mean? That we just are in sync like that. So it was kind of a no-brainer that this was the perfect remedy. And he wasn't a stranger to the Yes fans either at that point.
Right.
So, and Alan and Jay have a great relationship, and it's been great.
Okay, but you think if you tour it again, it'll be the dual drummer kind of situation again? You think?
Yeah, I think that's been what we've been wanting to do, and it's working for all parties. Yeah.
Well, I think Jay's doing a great job, and he brings a lot of energy to the proceedings. So.
It's awesome, and if you haven't seen it, then you got to check out the Topographic Drama live recording. And honestly, you're not going to know the difference. You're going to love it for what it is. It's Yes, and I think you got to check out the band next year. So
thing is, Jay, has an affinity for Alan's playing like I do for Chris. And the reason Jay and I started working together in the first place many years ago is when we met and had a drink. Bruce Gowdy kind of introduced me to him. We met and had a drink, and I asked him, "Who's your favorite drummer?" And he said, "Alan White." I said, "I know I'm going to love your playing." So kind of goes from there.
All right, I got another one.
We got a couple of questions too.
DJ Kong.
Yeah, what you got, Steven?
They're unrelated to Yes stuff. There's Emma asks, are there any good stories or experiences from working with Asia? Which I thought was kind of.
Well, that's another one of those double-edged swords where it was emotionally a bit of a roller coaster from playing live and being super sad. Especially singing "The Smile Has Left Your Eyes" with a huge picture of John Wetton behind me, and 15,000 people in the audience using their phones as a lighter, and it was like, wow, this is a lot here. So there was that, and then there was just the sheer joy of coming out and playing, Heat of the Moment, which is a well-known track, obviously, and in front of a Journey audience of 15 to 17,000 every night, and them just flipping out. What's wrong with that? It was pretty trippy. And for me, that was my first time fronting a band and performing, being the lead front guy at a gig that big. So there was a bit of like a, holy cow, I'm going to go out and do this. All right, let's do this. But it was a great experience on that level, but it was also tempered with sadness along the way. It was some moments to sing were really tough, thinking about John,
Sure. So what was the idea to add Bumblefoot?
I think that, they just wanted a different flavor with the vocals. You know what I mean? My voice is my voice, and they were in a bit of a pinch, and it worked for what we were doing. But I think, Bumblefoot's a little more suited for that Wetton range and that tonality, I think. And he did a great job, obviously, and he's a great guitar player.
Oh, yeah.
Super cool dude. Great
I love
guy
that
to work with.
fretless guitar he does. I mean, that's so hard to play.
Oh, I know. And he's a good showman. He's got his chops together on all fronts. And
yeah.
So it felt good. And he's a team player. It felt like a good band right there.
All right, I got a question. Someone would like to know, they're curious about the Squire Sherwood songs that were written and recorded around 1989 and 1990. The More We Live, Say Goodbye, Love Conquers All. Are there any versions eventually included on the Conspiracy album, or was it re-recorded? Does that make any sense?
No, I know what they're.
Love Conquers All.
I think I know what they're trying to get at. Like when we did The More We Live, there was these other songs we worked on. Love Conquers All, Say Goodbye, and The Lonesome Trail. That was the period we were working on those which is how this whole thing started with me, is Billy Sherwood will be the lead singer and replace John Anderson because John's doing ABWH. So this is the perfect guy to fill in and be the lead singer of Yes. The problem was that I didn't want to do it, and I was never going to do it. But everyone around me was telling me I'm going to do it. Lawyers, managers, the band, and I could say, no, I'm going to work on these songs with you, and I'll sing them if you want me to in the studio, but I'm not going to be the lead singer of Yes. No, it's not going to happen. So in that process of doing that, in that particular time frame before Union comes together, ABWH is still over on Arista. Yes is on Atco without a lead singer. That's when I come in. We do The More We Live. We do Love Conquers All. We do Say Goodbye and The Lonesome Trail at Cherokee Studios in Hollywood. And there is no Yes happening yet. It's an experimentation sort of period. It didn't last long because right at that period is when ABWH collided with Yes, and they turned it into Union. And I saw that coming, which was another reason why I didn't want to take the gig as the singer, because it was like, I see this coming. I'm just going to get out of the way. So in my getting out of the way, those songs I figured are going to go by the wayside, and somehow Chris really liked The More We Live, and I think John liked it, and so that song ended up on there, but the other three didn't have a home on that record. So when the box set comes out, they put out, I believe, Love Conquers All is on the box set, and say goodbye. I'm not sure if the Lonesome Trail made it to the box set or
I don't
not,
think so.
I don't think so.
but so that material was that period of time, and it was all in that same era, if you will.
Did you re-record Love Conquers All for the Conspiracy release? Because you released a version of it.
No, it's the same one except Jimmy Hahn's playing guitar instead of Raven, and I'm singing
Okay.
forever.
Okay.
So that's
That's
my
cool.
original vocal, and it's actually, the Conspiracy version is the original version we had. And the version on the Yes thing is after I gave the tapes, they were back then, to Trevor, and he re-recorded the guitar solos and sang the lead. And I thought he did a killer too.
It's a great version.
All right.
Yeah, it's good.
Another question regarding that time frame. Chris Squire mentioned in an interview from 1994 that Andrew Jackman had done orchestrations for some songs intended for Chris's next solo album. Of course, that ended up becoming Conspiracy, but whatever happened to the orchestral arrangements?
I don't know if that, I don't remember any of that part or hearing anything of that.
Okay.
Not sure where that info comes from, but I know that Chris and Jackman had a relationship and we're talking about it a lot. If there was something going on musically, I never heard the demos, and Chris was pretty good about playing me everything he was working on. So I don't remember that part, really.
All right. Yeah, we kind of touched on this earlier. It says Yes has been focusing heavily in recent years on recreating albums from the 70s in concert. But I'd like to know if there's any chance of songs from later periods coming in, like The More We Live, Homeworld, etc.
Maybe somewhere down the road, but as I said earlier, right now we're focusing on Relayer because that was the what we were going to do before the zombie apocalypse started.
Right.
But, you know, we're going to just pick it up right afterwards. But you never know downrange if some of that material will find its way.
All righty. All right, let's see here. Has there been any talk of getting either Tony Kaye or Pat Mraz more involved beyond the recent cameo guest appearances?
Not at the moment. You know, we're kind of back to the core 5 guys, 6 guys with Jay, obviously, and just doing that right now.
Okay. When listening to Topographic Oceans, do you usually skip side 3?
No, I don't skip any of it.
No, I'm just kidding. What's your favorite side?
I don't skip it. My battery's giving me 10%, and I've lost all of my chargers from the move. So we've got about 6% left here.
All right. Well,
I think-
we'll try and talk quickly
I
then.
think Joe's heading out. So
Someone's got a barbecue here. It's almost midnight in the Bronx. The party's still going.
I hear you.
Oh my God.
I think we could probably make it to midnight at this point. We're just 12 minutes away.
if you gotta go, Joe, just go ahead and head out unless you got a final question to say or anything.
Just much love to everybody. Keep rocking. Stay safe. And Billy, we look forward to finding out when the American tour dates are. So I hope you don't slip anything out tonight.
Man, you know, I can't wait to hear that news too.
No doubt.
I mean, it feels so far away. It's like, let's go. Let's get it on.
Later on, Sean, this was great, man. Thank you.
Do it again sometime, brother. Take care.
We'll do. Rock on.
See you, bro.
Later, Bill. Later, Steve.
Later.
All right, Billy, just a couple more here. Appreciate you dropping by. I've really enjoyed it.
Sure.
Great to shine some light on this era because it's not quite as well known, but I love it. Have you ever considered continuing Yes after Howe and Downs and White retired?
Wow. You know, I never considered being the bass player of Yes, so I can't really consider anything beyond where I am right now in the present, really. And I know that Yes music is going to live on in some shape or form because it always will. We'll just have to see what happens in the future, but you know, I'm just more focused on the present right now and just keeping it all going.
I totally understand. So here's another one. Billy arranged and produced a Todd Rundgren tribute album featuring various musicians playing alongside Rundgren's original master vocals.
Yes.
How did that come about? How did you choose who to take part? Did Todd have any input? Was Todd happy with the result? Were you happy?
Well, it's a funny thing because it was the weirdest record. got just Todd's lead vocals were licensed to a label, just the lead vocals. So in other words, there's nothing but the lead vocals, right? And I built the whole thing around the lead vocals. So it's a bit like taking a painting and holding it somewhere in a room and then saying, cool, this is where the living room and the whole thing's, the fireplace will be back there. And you've got to rebuild the shell of the house that painting is hanging in, because the painting being the lead vocal, right? So it was weird. But the good news is I'm a huge fan of Todd. So I knew it like the back of my hand. So it was easy for me to create it and understand the arrangements and what's going on with the parts and the chords, because I'd already, you know, I love Todd. I love Utopia. Chasm Sultan's one of my heroes.
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
I know all that stuff. So it was kind of easy on that front. But it was one of the weirdest records I've made, because you start from the end and then work backwards. It's like having dessert, then the dinner, then the salad, then the dinner rolls. You know, it's weird.
Right. Well, I love Todd too, and that tour you guys did together, that must have been pretty cool, getting a chance to watch him.
Yeah, it was very cool, and getting a chance to hang with Chasm and Prairie Prince and all those guys. I mean, great people, great musicians.
And I think some people don't realize, unless you're a real big Todd head, that, you know, Todd's more than hello, it's me, man. He's multifaceted diamond, you know. It's just,
well, one of my favorite records was Tortured Artist Effect. Is still like just, you know,
that was in my vinyl picks.
One of the featured albums on Sean's intro.
Yeah,
as it should be, right? I mean, that record's timeless.
I know, and it's just a contractual obligation. It's like Todd's toss-offs are better than most people's best stuff, you know. I mean, I love that record, you know. So
related to that question,
well, he's actually sorry to interrupt, but he's actually on this new Prog Collective record that I wrote and I'm working on. And I wrote this song at the beginning of this whole Corona thing. I had this thought, you know, driving around, there's no one on the streets, there's no one around anywhere, that the whole world's on hold. So I came up with this title, World's on Hold. Awesome. And Todd's now sung the song, and it sounds amazing. It's killer. Absolutely killer.
Oh, that's awesome. When is that album going to come out, the Prog Collector?
I'm not really sure, because I'm still working on it. I'm literally going to start mixing it here as soon as I plug in some more of my studio soon here.
And that's all original stuff, right? It's not covers.
Yeah, actually, this record's kind of unique. It's going to be 6 originals and 4 covers.
Oh, okay. Who else have you got on it so far?
I'd have to look, because my brain is thinking, you know, what's in that box over there right now.
Right, exactly.
Where did I leave the remote? That's what I'm thinking.
Are you at the new place or the old one?
What's that?
Are you at the new house or the old one?
I'm at the new house, but I'm looking around for my Oculus Quest because I'm jonesing, and I just, you know, my mind's a little elsewhere with that.
Hey, you know, we have a mutual friend. We have several, but Dave Kersner talked last year about recording an album project with you and John Davidson. Anything?
Yeah. We've been working on some things and should have some news on that front in the coming probably months, but there's something interesting coming, and I don't want to say too much more than that, because, you know, you gotta have some excitement in life.
Okay, how about a forthcoming project called White Car with you, John Davidson, and Johnny Bruns? Is there any?
I don't know about that project, but, you know, what's it pay?
Yeah, bring it on, right? And here's another one. Ages back in 2011, Billy talked about a project with Jerry Feynman and Robert Fripp. The Human Experiment did a single in 2009, but Billy became involved with subsequent plans for the album. Did anything come of that?
Wow, you know, it's like either I'm getting old and forgetting this stuff, or people have me doing all kinds of interesting things that I should have done.
Yeah, okay.
I don't really remember that. I mean, I know my only Fripp association is that somehow, excuse me, somehow John Wetton got him to play some guitar on John's solo album.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. That was from Henry Potts, the Yes specialist, who I'm sure you've heard of.
You know, maybe I've forgotten. It's like that one's, I don't remember.
All right, here's another one from him. In the promo for Days Between Stations' forthcoming third album, Giants, produced and co-written by you, Guitarist Sepan Samad something another says, I love how Billy captured us. Some of our final takes Billy captured were us rehearsing parts while the tracks were armed, or at the most when playing a first or second take.
Yes.
And the question is, they said that you've said yourself on other projects how you prefer to use first or second takes rather than having to do several. That's different from some other producers. Why do you prefer this approach?
Well, I mean, for me, the best stuff happens at the front end of sessions.
Sure.
Then you start reaching burnout and repetitive and thinking that you can better it, and emotion slips away and feel's gone, and it's cold and clinical, and you've lost it.
Exactly.
You know, when you're fishing and the fish bites the boat, you make a quick reaction and get that thing into the boat. If you mess around with the reel and try to hit it too long, that fish is gone. So for me, the best stuff happens at the front end of sessions, and I am a little bit known for that. Ask Jay. You know, we've tracked some things for Circa, for instance, where, you know, I'll give him the click and tell him, hey, let me just hear the drums. Here's the track. Just play along and get a feel for it. And he'll play through the whole thing, and I'll go, hang on a minute, and I'll listen back before you know it. I'm like, I think you just did it. You know what I mean? Listen to this.
That's the best. That's how we did our album.
Where inspiration comes from, and I do that a lot with my own stuff, solos and stuff. I'll grab the guitar, get the sound, and play for a few minutes, and if it's there, it's there. If it's not, I don't really chase it. But most of the time, it's there. You know what I mean? Just because, as a musician, you're inspired to play when you're inspired to play. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. All righty. Well, let me tell you all about a little bit of what's coming up, and we'll wrap it up.
All right.
Next week, my guest. Who is my guest next week, Stephen? You remember? Oh, we're going to have a Near Fest reunion where you remember the Northeast Art Rock Festival that happened for about 10 years? Yeah. I used to be on the staff and I attended years before that. And my friends Rob and Chad are going to come by and we're going to reminisce. We're going to
cool.
surprise artists drop in that you might know. I'm sure.
All right.
And then the following week, I've got Wings guitarist Lawrence Juber. Remember Back to the Egg, the last album they did around 1980 with Coming Up and Good Night Tonight? Yeah, he's a guitar player on that. And he's also a fantastic finger pick chord melody style guy that plays in Dad Gad all the time.
There's a great song on that record I was just listening to, that we're open tonight for fun.
Yeah.
Open to all our doors. That's great.
I love that other one, the disco one, the ooh baby, couldn't have done a word.
Oh, yeah.
To me.
There's some great stuff on there.
Ran it right through me. Yeah. I love that. So
I actually I went to a hotel as soon as it opened to get away. You know, I went to a casino and on the TV was that channel X, which is great. And they had Wings live of that. Over America. Oh, man, it was killer.
Yeah, that was such an amazing band. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to him. And then the following week, my good friend Vaylor Trucks is going to be here. He's Butch Trucks' son, the drummer from the Allman Brothers.
That's cool.
We're going to look at the family tree from an insider's perspective. And after that, Dave Kersner is going to be on with his band, including the McGraw sisters, who we've all seen sing back up with Pink Floyd in the 80s and 90s.
Yes,
with Fernando, he's going to drop in too because he's the guitar player. And I have an interview with Rick Wakeman next month also. But unfortunately, it's just a phone interview at noon. But still, I'll take it. And he's got a great new album out called The Red Planet. It's all instrumental and it's hot, hot, hot. If you like Six Wives, it's more in that ballpark. There's no stuff on it. It's just straight up prog with all the dazzling Moog solos you can shake a stick at.
Right.
Snuck in there too.
It's going to be great.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, thanks, Billy. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. And
right on. Well, happy 4th of July to all of you guys and all of you fellow Americans out there. And to everybody around the world, if you were watching, thank you for tuning in. And I hope we didn't bore you for too long.
I think they loved it.
People really it.
Right on, guys. Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah, finish your moving, and I hope everything goes smooth for you. And let's stay in touch. And everybody out there, have a happy 4th. You are stronger than you know. Stay the course. We're going to be all right.
Cheers.
Take care, Yes fans and everybody else. It's always a pleasure. See you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.